Okay, so we're talking about your project that is due this Friday. This is your last assignment, and you were told to open up the Google Doc and read it and follow the instructions. And on part 2 in your project, you are told that you are to take an angle in standard position in the unit circle, and that's in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. So I'm about to show you basically the steps that you need to do for your angle, except I'm going to choose an angle in quadrant 3. Please do not use this angle. It is not in the correct quadrant. I'm just showing you an example of what it would look like to produce an angle that terminates in quadrant 3 and how to determine the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of that angle by using a reference triangle. So the first thing you can do is go to Google and do a search for a blank unit circle, and there will be many unit circles that pop up. So you can choose any one that you prefer. I think I chose this one. I'm not real sure. I don't really remember, but anyway, you'll need to grab a copy. Be careful when you grab it. Make sure you're getting one that you can reference the link. And some of these actually have their citation right on the document. So I've used one like that. The next thing you'll do is copy a unit circle graphic into one of your into either your Google Doc or into Google Slides, or you can copy it into a Google Drawing. I copied mine into Word. Now, the text is actually very easy to produce in Word, but the graphic is not. So you may want to open a Google Drawing, put your drawing on there, get everything drawn the way you want it, then close that, and then you can do Google Docs to create equations. You can also go to Equatio and open up that editor to create some of these graphics. So what I've done is I've pasted this unit circle that I found, and this one just happened to have the degree measures already on there, and I circled the one that I chose. So I chose these 210 degrees, which is in the third quadrant. Since you're not in the third quadrant, you'll need to choose either 120, 135, 150, or in the fourth quadrant, you can choose 300, 315, or 330. So you basically have 6 to choose from. And the next thing you're going to do is draw in a reference triangle. Now remember, the reference triangle has to have one of its legs on the x-axis, and then its hypotenuse is actually a radius of the unit circle. And since I've chosen 210, this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. You don't have to choose a 30, 60, 90 triangle. You could do a 45, 45, 90 triangle if you want to choose one of the ones in the center. But no matter, you'll need to draw a triangle in your unit circle that looks similar to the one I'm showing you. And I have labeled the angles 30, 60, and 90. So the next process is to explain how to get the two legs on your triangle. The hypotenuse is given because it's a 1, because this is a unit circle, which means the radius of the circle is 1. But the legs, you have to use your 30, 60, 90 to figure those out. So we take the hypotenuse, we divide it by 2, because it's half the hypotenuse, and the short leg will be 1 over 2. Since it's in the third quadrant, the sign of the that you put on this number should be negative, and that's because the y-coordinate is negative in the third quadrant. To get your long leg of your 30, 60, 90, you multiply your short leg by the square root of 3. This number will also be negative because the x-coordinate is negative in the third quadrant. So all of that information, I've just included a text box, and I've talked through that. So you can do that with little bubbles or circles or shapes that you type in, and again, you could do this in a Google Drawing pretty easily. All right, or in Google Slides. All right, so down here at the bottom, you'll notice I've included a citation for this graphic. It actually had this in the graphic, which made it kind of nice, so I could use that to help me. And I did put the date that I retrieved it. Okay, finally, we need to find the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. Well, once the triangle's labeled, that's pretty easy to do. Your reference angle that you use in your reference triangle is always the one closest to 0, 0. So this number, this angle, 30 degrees, use that like you would use theta. And so if you want the sine of your 210 degrees, you would go to this angle and find the opposite leg, which in this case is the negative 1/2, and you would put that over the hypotenuse, which is a 1, and that reduces to give you negative 1/2. For cosine, we always do the adjacent leg, so that would be this side, this horizontal side, over the hypotenuse, 1, and then you would reduce that. And for tangent, you will do the opposite leg, which is the negative 1/2, and then the adjacent leg, which is negative square root of 3 over 2, and you would reduce that. Now, I did not rationalize this, but you could if you want. 1 over the square root of 3 is the same as the square root of 3 over 3. The next part is to find the radian measure for your angle. So at 210 degrees, you just have to remember that 180 degrees is equivalent to pi radians. And so a real quick way to convert 210 into radians is to divide 210 by 180 and multiply by pi. So you just reduce the fraction, drop the zeros, and divide both of those by 3, and you'll get 7 pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6 is your radian measure for 210. And that's basically it. So that's using a unit circle and a triangle to determine the sine, the cosine, and the tangent of your angle, and then converting that angle measure from degrees to radians. If y'all have any questions on this project, if you need suggestions or help in creating your graphic, please leave me a comment. Tomorrow I will probably be doing a tutoring session so that I can help you with your work if you need it. Y'all have a great evening.